everyone, George here, and we're back in Five Nights at Freddy's, and it's time for us to work a little bit harder on that restroom area. And specifically, I want to tackle the pizzas that are on the walls. Now, those pizzas in itself are not only whole pizzas, but partial pizzas. They have toppings on them, such as pepperonis, and possibly green peppers, maybe onions. I really can't tell from this photo. It's far too noisy. So, even scrolling through different reference material, trying to figure out exactly what's going on, it's just, there's too much noise grain everywhere. So moving the reference material out of the way, it's about time for us to create that stuff. And really, ultimately, I feel like it's just going to be a couple of really thin cylinders stacked on top of each other with some cylinder pepperonis and maybe some slightly awkward looking green peppers. So I create a cylinder. Now I'm trying to figure out the number of size I want because I do want to cut out slices of cheese pizza. So I want to make sure that the tops and bottoms and lefts and rights all have seams. Whoops, that's not right. Okay, let's try that again. There we are. All right, so now we shrink it down to what I think the crust's width should be. And we're going to go ahead and grab that element, duplicate it, bring it on up, scale it, and put it on top of the other element. I'm going to go ahead and bevel those edges because they really need to be smooth. That's at least what I saw in the reference material, was smooth edges on both the crust and the cheese. Now that we have the crust and the cheese done, we can move on to the toppings, which are going to be pepperonis and green peppers. To do this, first the pepperoni, I'm going to bring in a cylinder. I'm going to make sure I don't have too many polys on it. That's too few. I want to at least have enough so it's round, so I go ahead and go with 20. I scale that down and I move it into place, and we put it on top after moving the pivot point to the bottom to the pizza itself. Still a little bit too large, so I'm going to tweak it ever so slightly, make sure that pivot's on the other side, scale it down, scale it in, and then duplicate it eventually across the entire pizza so we have pepperonis everywhere. So that's a good size for those pepperonis, I think. So now we're going to go ahead and Control Delete or Control copy them over and over and over and just randomly place them throughout the area. If you're a Pizza Hut, Domino's, or Little Caesars person, then you probably know the best way to put pepperonis on a pizza. I'm just going to be randomly placing them all over the place. Now that we have that done, we're going to bring a cube in and we're going to make that into our green pepper. So first I'm going to extend it in one direction, and then I'm going to increase the subdivisions because I plan on using a non-linear deformer to actually bend this structure so it looks more like the shape of a pepper. There we go, thinning it out, scaling it down, and of course choosing our bend tool, realigning the bend tool along the axis of the actual object, and then of course making sure we bend it just enough so that it looks kind of like it's a part of a green pepper. Not quite enough. Let's go for a little bit more. Yeah, I think we're getting there. One more step. There we are. That's a good green pepper. Taking a look at the edges and verts on that thing really quick, making sure everything makes sense. Now I'm kind of noticing that the edges don't look perfect, and I might need to change some of that stuff. But first, I do need to delete the bottoms of both the pepperoni and the green pepper, because you'll never see them, and those are just wasted polygons that are being processed by your computer. Now I go ahead and use the multi-cut tool to slice this thing in half so that I can have a little bit of an edge that I can pull out. Same thing with the other side. I go ahead and grab the multi-tool and I cut into the center. Whoops, screwed that up. Never mind. Back up, back up, back up, George. There we are. Better. And cut from there to there, and down, and then put another cut in on the other side, and then just pull it out arbitrarily. Good. Going to scale it down because obviously that's way too big of a green pepper for a pizza. Going to delete the deformers on it first though, and then bring it on over, place it, make sure the pivot point is in the right location, and just put it on top of our pizza. Now it's time to duplicate this object several times and move it all around the place. So we're going to duplicate it and just move it from area to area, and we'll worry about rotating things and making them non-uniform a little bit later. Right now we just need enough peppers on that pizza to make it look like it's a green pepper and pepperoni pizza. Now we're rotating things, just getting them to look a little bit different from side to side. That's all good. Great. Grab another one, rotate it, and finally rotate you all the way inwards. And those are our basic pizza toppings, I should say. But you know what? We're going to need to UV map these eventually, and while it's all together, we might as well do that. Before I do that though, I need to go through and delete all the bottoms of these polygons. They're completely worthless and they do absolutely nothing for us. So it's just wasted polygons that are being processed. So I go through, delete all the ones on the bottom of the crust, and then I'm going to go through again and delete all the bottoms on the cheese area. And the same thing will happen with the pepperonis and the peppers as well. So here I'm just grabbing all the different elements, combining them together as one object. I'm resetting the pivot to the bottom. I'm moving it so that it's going to sit right on top of the crust. Oh boy, okay, I think it's almost time for us to start UV mapping this thing, which is going to be a lot of fun. Edit, delete all by type first. Now we're going to unwrap everything that we have here. So we can see we've got cylinders, we've got circles, we've got all kinds of stuff going on. Let's find one pepperoni that we like and unwrap it first. And actually, this is when I notice that the pepperonis have bottoms. So I go ahead and grab the bottom vertice, grow it out, and then select faces around it and delete those out. That way I don't have all those extra faces adding more computations to my my scene. You'll never see them. It doesn't matter. Now I go through and delete all of the other pepperonis that are not proper and get rid of them. I only need 2 for the moment for the UV process. For this, I am going to end up using a planar map, and I'm going to relax it so that everything kind of fans outward since there's no bottom to it. There we go. Flat planar. Actually, I believe I tried cylindrical at first, and then I said, you know what, screw this. This isn't working. So let's just go with a planar map, and then let's just relax everything. So there we go. Planar. There we go. We do a planar mapping on it from the Y direction, apply. There it is. Now we're going to go under our tools and relax the entire thing. And now you can see the shape represents it far better. Not only that, but we also have the outside areas being shown, which makes texturing a lot easier on our part. Now we have our pepperoni to deal with. We're also going to do a plain old planar map from the top, and we're also going to relax those UVs. Since there's no bottom, we don't have to worry about anything. We're going to shrink it down a bit, move it somewhere, and eventually we're going to get to the point where we gotta mess with everything, move it all around, and get it to work. Shrinking it down, trying to get it close to the other element for the moment, but this is all for waste because in about 10 minutes when we bring this into Photoshop, we're going to see what happens. Now we need to do the same thing. We're going to grab our pizza, do a planar mapping on our pizza, and then we're going to relax those vertices as well. There we are. Now I make the dumb decision at this point to separate the cheese from the crust, when in reality, you're not going to really see the underlying crust in any way. The pizza's on top of it, or the cheese is on top of it. So I should have gotten rid of all of that. But for here in this UV map, we've got both of them together for when we export everything out. Now I'm being fussy with the UVs, trying to move them into the right place. Now I'm adding in the pepperoni and the green pepper to this object so I can see them all together in the UV coordinate system, and I can manipulate, move them around accordingly. Just continuing to tweak the UVs, trying to get them in the right spot based on proportions and sizes. The crust doesn't need to be big, the cheese does, and of course the green pepper and the pepperoni can be whatever size they need to be, really. Whatever fills up the entire space. Going to do a UV snapshot of this thing, save it out, and make it so we can open this up in Photoshop. That's where we're going to do all of our magic. Alright, so now it's time for us to bring in our file. So File, Open. Let's go ahead and find our texture file under Maya, Images. And there we go. Now we're going to add a stroke to those objects so we can see them far more clearly. And there you can see our pizza, pizza crust, pepperoni, and our green pepper. And now we're going to do a Google search for those items so we can find them easily. Wow, right off the bat we got a great image of a pepperoni. Let's grab that one and bring it into Photoshop. Let's get rid of all the white background around it and then segment it from the rest of the stuff. So instead of doing that, I had my grid and I decided to use the circle select tool, and I'm just going to grab as close to a circle as I possibly can, paste it on over, and then put it where the pepperoni should belong, scale it up so it's slightly outside of its bounds just in case the bitmaps cause me problems, and I think we're okay. Great, that looks good. So there's our pepperoni. Next up is our green pepper. We need a green pepper that's kind of from the side. The idea is it's been sliced up, so we can't just use a whole-bodied one. So let's keep looking. Some of these are... Now let's go to File Select, and we're going to grab the white color. Not quite perfect, so I'm going to have to fill in some parts with my brush just to make it perfect. So now we copy and paste our green pepper in, and we're going to scale it up and make it fit into our area. We're going to need to use the warp tool to actually make this work. But first, it's time to scale it. Get it pretty close. Maybe a little bit longer. Now we go to warp, and we're just going to warp the different pieces into place. Good. That's not so bad. Now, while all of this has been going on, I've been contemplating something. Do we really need a crust layer? Can the crust layer and the cheese layer coincide and be one with each other? So after I save this file out, we're going to go back into Maya. Now we're looking for that perfect pizza topping with cheese. And you know what? I think I might have found one. But we need to make sure the size is correct first. So we're going to go over and adjust the size to make sure they're large. And right there, we see a couple different examples of really good pizzas that'll work for us. Let's open this one up, copy, and let's bring it over to Photoshop, Control N and Control V to make a new one. Now, it's not perfect. The bottom got kind of cut off. So what I'm going to do is actually extend the size of this thing so it's a square. And then I'm going to grab the top part of this. Well, I'm going to screw up and grab the bottom half of it first. But eventually I'm going to grab the top half of this pizza, and then I'm going to duplicate it and rotate it over so that it looks like it's the same pizza, perfectly seamless. Yeah, there's a screw up right there. Alright, there we go. Now I've copied the right portion of it, moved it into place, nudging it along ever so slightly. We're going to combine the layers, and then we're going to use the healing brush to get rid of any kind of nasty creases that may have popped up due to the fact that we just, butchered this image. And this is when I start realizing, hey, you know what? There's no real reason to have a different crust versus a different pizza. The two of them can be one and the same. So I select the entire bottom ring, and I grow, and then I shrink, and I delete the entire inside area of this thing. But now we have this little bit of a gap, and that's kind of a problem. So what I'm going to do first of all is I notice that it doesn't look like it did a perfect job in setting one within the other. So I go ahead and grab all the other elements, and I'm going to move them up so that they coincide with the crust. So next up is the bridge phase of everything, and this you're just going to have to bear with. I will speed it up now so that you can see me bridging all the different edges together. Alright, now that that's all done, we can go ahead and bring our pepperonis and peppers back up to the top so that they sync up properly. And there we go, they're both on the top, so no problems. Now we can go ahead and move on to actually properly texturing this object, which means we're going to have to edit some of the things that we've already done. But believe me, it's not a problem. We've done all the hard work, we got the textures, and it's just going to be about moving things around and making space. So see how bad the UVs are? They're connected now across each other. That's what we're going to have to fix. So let's move some of these elements out of the way. We're going to do another planar map, and we're going to relax the UVs once again, and we're going to put that down in the corner. Then we're going to grab our pickle, as I call it, or our green pepper, and just move it into place wherever we can. Now we save it out so that we can open it up in Photoshop and use these new UVs to determine how the textures should be placed. Now I am filtering out the pizza for some reason, inverting it, and I'm going to go back in and blacken anything on the interior that should have actually been, well, basically parts of the pizza and not transparencies. Great, that's about perfect for us and what we're doing. So now we go back to the image. Going to need to invert that image, obviously, and then Control A, Control Shift C, and we're going to bring that over into our main area. However, our UVs are wrong, so we need to open up the new UV map under the Maya Images folder. Now, I find the easiest way to do this is to separate the window off and drag it in to the other window, the layer itself, and that will center it. Otherwise, if you don't do that, it won't center the layer properly, and you'll end up with it being skewed off slightly to one side. Now we have way too many UV layers. We're going to have to delete one, obviously. So there we go. We deleted the other UV layer. Now we just need to move the green pepper to the top and position the pizza properly in the center, or center-ish area. Going to do a little bit of transformation on this. Not a whole lot. It's relatively close. There's not a whole lot to do with this. I'm going to warp it a little bit up and over. Now we've moved our pizza into place and we're scaling it up, and then we're going to manipulate it using the warp tool again so that it fills all of the different crannies and crevices that are necessary. Alright, and there we go. We got pepperonis, green peppers, and pizza. Let's go ahead and save that out. Make sure we have a background image though first, because we don't want transparencies. And what I like to do is usually take the main color of the thing, scale it way up, and blur the crap out of it, just so that when bitmaps happen, that's kind of the predominant color that gets mixed in with everything else. Saving it out as a PSD and a PNG, and finally right click on this object and then create a new texture, Fong, and let's go ahead to File and add pizza to it. We'll rename that later. I'm really just interested in seeing how this whole thing works. Now, I'm not perfectly happy with the pepper. There's some problems with it, but from a distance, which is where we're going to be seeing it from, there's really nothing wrong with it at all. I mean, I'm getting kind of nitpicky at this point. So now I've extracted the pepperoni from the rest of the object, and I'm going to start duplicating it and moving it around. But first I need to center that pivot. Now I can duplicate it over and over and over again and place them wherever I want, just like before. The big difference now is that I have UVs that are already mapped to it properly, so I do not need to worry about anything at all. Now, the green bean gave me some problems. I think I had accidentally duplicated the surface of this twice, and when I did that, the green bean was duplicated as well, and now I've got multiple green beans on multiple cheese parts. So it took a while for me to get that to actually work. While I could duplicate it, what you'll notice is as soon as I go to rotate things, everything goes haywire. So here I am, we're going to each pepperoni, we're rotating them properly, one after the other, making sure that they're all a little bit different in orientation, so it's not quite so obvious that I stole the same texture for each and every one. But now here comes the dreaded pepperonis, or not pepperonis, green peppers, where I had screwed up, combined things, and you can see when I hid them, they went away as well. So something's messed up. So the first thing I do is I go to my outliner and start looking at what is under what. Or do we have parents and children problems? Do we have grouping problems? Is there something going on here that's making everything just an absolute mess? And I'm just playing around trying to figure out what's going on, deleting elements, discombining them or uncombining them, trying to figure out why these peppers are, well, just completely and totally messed up. Once again, going into my view of all the different hierarchy elements, trying to figure out what the hell is going on with this. I've ungrouped everything. Everything's a separate polygon. That can only mean that I've combined things still and that they're all messed up. So I need to do something about that. And there we go, selecting different objects, trying to make sure they work out right. Now I click the objects to see whether or not they're actually invoking the pizza top. And now that I think everything's right, I start rotating those peppers into place so that they don't look quite so uniform. But every now and then I'm going to run into a pepper that's still connected to everything else, have to deconnect it, and then rotate it and center its pivot, or center its pivot and then rotate it so that it works out properly. And once again, rotate, rotate, and rotate. Fun time, right? And almost done. Now, in reality, those toppings are pretty crap. I don't know about you, but I certainly wouldn't buy that pizza if only a few pepperonis and a few green peppers were on it. But, you know what? It's good enough for a video game because you're never going to actually get to eat it. So we'll go with that. Anyway, I think we're about done with our pepperoni. This was a good thing. I think in the next video we're going to slice it up and make some individual cheese slice pizzas for the walls. But anyway, remember, if you liked the video, give me a like. If you didn't like it, not only dislike it, but give me a comment on what was wrong with it. And as always, if you want more content like this in the future, remember to subscribe. And I'll see you all later. Have a great day or night. Goodbye.